If you would like an opinion from an expert on this, feel free to talk to an expert.
So infertility is a result of puberty blockers being used. Wait. Hold on.
That's crazy. He's opening and shutting his hand like blah, 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 blah. Nuts. We here at the Daily Wire have now obtained damning exclusive footage of a private hour-long meeting between the current president of the American Medical Association, Dr. Bobby McCamala, Michigan Representative Brad Paquette, and former guest of the show, Dr. Eitan Haim, who you may remember as the Texas Children's Hospital whistleblower. This footage is pretty catastrophic for the AMA. It proves beyond any doubt their support for trans healthcare is based on fake science, willful blindness, total abandonment of all evidence-based medicine, all of which are supposed to be antithetical to the existence of their organization, a violation of the Hippocratic Oath. Now, as many of you know, the Daily Wire has already landed a major blow against the trans industry by investigating Vanderbilt Hospital. That culminated in a Supreme Court victory earlier this summer, and that allowed Tennessee and other red states to ban barbaric transing of the children procedures. The British government has totally walked back their policies in the wake of the Cass Review. The Trump administration's Health and Human Services report and Michael Schellenberger's WPATH files have exposed the medical experts' own admissions of doubt. The FTC has begun examining gender-affirming care, so-called, as a consumer fraud, which of course it is. Confronted with all of these defeats, the trans activist army continues to double down. Gender ideologues continue to seek legitimization in law. Teachers' unions, medical establishment, they all leave children across the country vulnerable to medical abuse. So how are they still able to do this? Well, because they have one gigantic pillar that they continue to stand on as the authority of the largest medical association in America, the American Medical Association, or AMA. So the AMA is supposed to be the gold standard for medical associations. They preside over 250,000 dues-paying members, that is to say physicians, med students, plastic surgeons. Basically, if you're a doctor, you have to be a member of the AMA. They publish a comprehensive code of medical ethics. They run public health campaigns. They operate as a quasi-governmental organization. They issue the majority of their continuing education that doctors must receive in order to maintain medical licenses. So back in 2008, the AMA adopted something called Resolution 122 in support of drugs and surgeries used today to quote-unquote treat gender confusion. And they proclaimed that they would reject the myth that such treatments, this would be like hormone therapy and cutting the breasts off healthy youngsters, fake vaginas being made, are experimental, and declared them instead safe and effective treatment for gender identity disorder. The AMA couched all of this as a matter of non-discrimination, as if there was no difference between a mastectomy for a woman with breast cancer to save her life and cutting off a 16-year-old girl's breast because she is gender confused. By 2021, the AMA dove in with laser focus on gender confused kids. AMA's then vice president and CEO, James Madera, wrote a letter to state governors urging them not to ban the castration, sterilization of gender confused kids, claiming empirical evidence demonstrates that trans and non-binary gender identities are normal variations of human identity and expression, and that the science backed the use of hormonal sterilization, surgery to prevent gender-confused patients from killing themselves. This idea has consistently been trotted out there as their excuse, essentially, for medical mutilation. That without these horrifying hormonal and surgical interventions, patients would kill themselves. That was never true. In the Supreme Court oral arguments regarding U.S. versus Scrimeti, a transgender ACLU lawyer and activist named Chase Strangio buckled under pressure from Justice Alito, admitting suicides were, quote, thankfully and admittedly rare among trans youth. In 2022, then president of the AMA, Dr. Jack Resnick, criticized all scrutiny of gender-affirming care as, quote unquote, disinformation.
I'm angry. I'm angry about how science and medicine have been politicized, about the flood of disinformation that seeks to discredit data and evidence, undermine public health. No, we didn't pick this political fight, but we will stand up for our patients, for the policies of this House, and for our profession. More lies cloud our ability to care for transgender patients. Drivers of disinformation say that gender-affirming care clinics are performing genital mutilation surgeries on teens, or not involving families in care decisions, are using medical treatments on young children who show up after wondering for one day if they're trans.
Of course, we know that these procedures have, in fact, been performed on gender-confused kids. Before we get to anything else, the AMA's blatant disregard, ignorance, deceit on this basis alone should disqualify them as an authority on the trans issue. Unfortunately, the evidence that we've obtained indicates there's much, much more where that came from. So let's dive in. All right, up in Michigan, a former teacher turned Republican state representative named Brad Paquette decided to go straight to the source, a fellow Michigander and the incoming president of the AMA, Dr. Bobby McCamala. Paquette also invited Dr. Eitan Haim, who you may remember as the Texas Children's Hospital whistleblower. The footage of their meeting, which we're bringing you exclusively here today, completely discredits the AMA. For starters, AMA President Dr. Bobby McConnell cites many stats that are just flat out wrong. He declares puberty blockers are reversible, only to be confronted with the facts about the real risks from Dr. Haim, who's not only an AMA member, but a doctor with experience surgically placing puberty blockers in pediatric patients with actual endocrine disorders like precocious puberty. In response, Dr. McConnell demonstrates no alarm, dodges Dr. Haim's questions, and even mocks Dr. Haim's concerns in one of the most unprofessional moments of the entire encounter. Take a look.
Let me ask one question. All right. So you said that puberty blockers are reversible, right? What they're recommending, the time to use these blockers are Tanner stage 2 before the onset of puberty, when children are 11, 12 years old, right? WPATH, right?
Again,
even
I'm not going to say this again. I'm just going to say it one more time. I'm not an expert at all. I'm not an expert at all in the science that you're talking to me about. I defer to the experts. If you would like an opinion from an expert on this, feel free to talk to an expert.
So infertility is a result of puberty blockers being used in Tanner stage 2. A micropenis is a absolute... Wait. Hold on.
That's crazy. If you can't see that, what he is doing with his hand is he's opening and shutting his hand like blah, 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 blah. Nuts. We'll get to more on this in just a moment. First, did you know your internet provider watches your every move online? They track all your clicks, all your time spent online. They build a profile, they sell it to the highest bidder. It sounds like it's illegal, but it actually is not. Why? Well, because the government can benefit from that. They create a loophole around your Fourth Amendment rights because the government usually has a back door with all of these data providers. They can buy it from the data broker. It's completely legal, no warrant required. These data brokers erode our freedoms as Americans, but there is a solution, ExpressVPN. With ExpressVPN, all my online activity travels through secure encrypted servers. Nobody, not even my internet provider, can track my movements or infringe on my rights. I'm constantly traveling. Public Wi-Fi means I am vulnerable. ExpressVPN stops that vulnerability where it starts. Here is some exciting news. ExpressVPN just launched Identity Defender for U.S. customers, included at no extra cost. It removes your data from brokers' files, monitors the dark web for your information, alerts you if someone tries using your social security number. Find out how you can get 4 months free by scanning the QR code on screen, clicking that link in the description box below, or by going to expressvpn.com/Ben Shapiro Show. Again, that's expressvpn.com/Ben Shapiro Show. Faced with legitimate science challenging his position, the AMA demonstrates total dereliction of duty. Unfortunately, this was just the first indication of the stupidity and dishonesty of the AMA. In response to Dr. Haim's point that medications and surgeries do indeed cause irreversible damage, Dr. McConnell simply parrots long debunked claims that the patient regret rate for all of these interventions is supposedly only 2%.
Right. So what I would say is, do you know what the percentage of people are that actually change their gender identity after identifying with a particular gender?
Yeah, it's very high.
No, it's not.
Yeah. According to what?
According to the people that see these patients, the people that regret pursuing a change in their gender, where they say, you know what, I shouldn't have done that, is 2% at the highest.
Okay, so that is not true. The most oft-cited study claiming that 2% regret rate is by Bustos et al., Regret After Gender-Affirming Surgery. At first, that sounds great. A systematic review, a meta-analysis. Right there in the title, the keyword surgery indicates the study does not measure regret for the tens of thousands of American teenagers who took any measures up to the point of surgery, like, puberty blockers or cross-sex hormones, which still forever alters their body, their voices, their future fertility. A critique of that study, published in the International Open Access Journal of the American Society of Plastic Surgeons, claims Bustos left out several relevant papers, inappropriately included another, and miscalculated the basic data. Additionally, of the studies included, many lacked adequate follow-up, only tracking patients for a year or two. Regret often takes an average of 8 years to manifest. In one of the studies Bustos reviewed, there was a 36% loss to follow-up rate, meaning we have no idea what happened to those patients. But methodological negligence is just one part of the problem. Is, as always the case, the entire notion of being trans doesn't have any internal coherence, of course, because the idea that a man believes he's a woman, therefore he's a woman, is totally anti-science. Here's what happens when Dr. Haim presents Dr. Bobby with the AMA's own statements, showing how the AMA has totally contradicted itself on whether gender identity is even alterable. It's kind of an important thing to determine before you start cutting healthy body parts off of children, you might think.
So they're saying that underlying the assumption, right, for conversion therapy, gender identity can and should be changed. This assumption is not based on medical and scientific evidence, right? So in this according to this brief, they're saying that gender identity cannot be changed, right? That it's not based on medicine or science. But then when you go to another one,
actually, it says that it can and should be changed. I mean, you've read this. So gender identity is something that goes on here, not here or down there.
Yeah. So, but according to this, it's saying the assumption that it can change is not based on medicine or science. But here it's saying neither gender nor sex are stable objective categories. And then in this one, it's saying gender describes someone's inner sense of being a woman, a man, another gender, or genders, or no gender. And the problem with these definitions is obvious. They're self-evident, right?
I don't see it as self-evident because I'm not understanding what your concern is, because these are things that the gender identity is something that happens from somebody's brain.
But this says it cannot change, right? This is saying that the assumption that gender identity can change is not based on science. In this one, it's saying it's neither gender nor sex are stable objective measures.
These are obviously incompatible statements. Either gender identity changes or it doesn't. Dr. McConnell has apparently sided with the idea that it can change, which is kind of a wild position to take when you're defending the amputation of a teenager's reproductive organs.
What the policy of the AMA is that gender identity is something that comes from something here, not the chromosomes, and what people think they are can change. And wherever it lands, if it's causing them suicidal ideation because they think they're something and that's not something that's accepted or getting them into trouble socially, that's why the rate of suicide is at 50% or higher in this population. So it is a mental thing. I'm not sure exactly. I mean, again, I can't read all the stuff you've highlighted, but I'm just telling you what the policy of the American Medical Association is.
So just to be clear, you said that the gender identity can change.
Yes.
Dr. Bobby is making up that statistic. There's not even a random activist study from a blue-haired gender fluid they, them in Portland that claims that there is an actual 50% suicide rate. When Dr. Bobby runs out of incorrect claims to make, he then reverts back repeatedly to his assertion that he's not actually an expert. And he's not an expert in endocrinology or plastic surgery. But as the president of the AMA, he's supposed to be an expert in the AMA's code of ethics and at the bare minimum, the Hippocratic Oath. Dr. Haim points out the obvious problem. If the AMA is not the expert on this, then who precisely is? When confronted with the findings of the HHS report and WPATH's deceit, which Dr. Bobby admits he has not read, he then gets defensive and deflects.
As we've seen in the most recent HHS report, all those organizations have been implicated in concealing evidence that doesn't support their recommendations, right? These people are hiding studies that don't support their conclusions. That's what WPATH was doing with Johns Hopkins University.
You're telling me that the people that take care of these patients at the University of Michigan are hiding data?
They might be involved in it if they're in WPATH and were responsible for making those guidelines. Absolutely. That's beyond a doubt. We have that information from the Alabama lawsuit.
File a case against them and we'll see where it goes. But that's not at all what they do. This is a theory.
No.
But there's no data about it.
All you have to do is read that report. I can't believe you guys haven't read this. I mean, you guys are the leaders of the AMA.
Ultimately, Dr. McConnell connected Representative Paquette with one of the AMA's esteemed trans medicine experts. He assured him that this expert would be able to answer his questions. You'll never guess who they put forward for the job. Dr. Jessie Krikorian, a family medicine doctor who is trans herself. On tomorrow's show, we bring you that call with Dr. Krikorian, which was in many ways even more disturbing. Here's a quick look at how ideologically steeped AMA's expert truly is.
So when we are seeing very young children, we're talking about social functioning. We're talking about how they feel. We're seeing whether it's consistent. But, you know, when I had a 7-year-old patient in Marquette, for instance, who identified as transgender. She had for years. Her main concern was how to diminish any appearance of a bulge in her ballet leotard. So our medical treatment was just how do we avoid rashes in this kid? At the same time, mom was expressing that before they let her socially transition, before they let her grow her hair out and choose her own name, she had frequently talked about wanting to die, and that had stopped as soon as they let her start making those choices.
By the way, Jesse Krikorian is supposed to be a man. What does that sound? Notice something about the voice there? Remember, that's a medical doctor, not some activist on TikTok, espousing how they've affirmed a child's confusion and strung along their parents in their activist crusade. Routine way something this insane exits the mouth of the AMA's apparent top transgender expert, upon whose opinion the AMA's policies apparently rely, is absolutely astonishing. We'll bring you the rest of the story tomorrow. For today, Dr. Bobby McCamala and the AMA's feet should be held to the fire. The AMA must be stopped from rubber stamping barbarism and experimental medicine. Head on over to amaexposed.com. That's amaexposed.com to learn more and sign on to our petition. Obviously, Daily Wire's been fighting this for a very, very long time. We mentioned Vanderbilt. Matt Walsh has done amazing work on this. Our entire company has had a policy since the very beginning that we only refer to people by their actual biological pronouns. We fight the fight here at Daily Wire. This is just another example. Well, that's all for now, folks. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment your thoughts down below. Be sure to check out all of the other great content on my channel. I'll see you here next time.